Today we're going to be talking mainly about, in this section, the Red Sea crossing. You have a video you'd like to share with us, and you're going to tell us what's going on there.
Yes. Before we start the video, we have a map here of the Sinai Peninsula,
Okay.
where the children of Israel, they left Egypt proper, which will be over in the Cairo area, for instance, and they traveled east across the Sinai, and then they were told to turn south, which brought them down through the Wadi Watur, through the mountains, and then the Wadi Watur emptied out onto this large beach that we see on the east side of the Sinai Peninsula, and the western edge of the Gulf of Aqaba.
And that is Nueva.
That's Nueva, and that's where we're headed to. That's the Red Sea crossing site. Here, we're starting out in Cairo, and we're driving through the city here. You can see it's quite large. You see the minarets and so forth in the background.
So you're literally going to take us to Sinai in your car?
Yes, yes.
All right, this is great.
This is the route. We're going to actually travel almost the route that the children of Israel took, crossing the Sinai and going over to the Red Sea crossing. Here in the background, you can see a large ancient castle there in Cairo. Of course, they have a lot of history compared to the United States.
Yes, hundreds and hundreds of, if not thousands, obviously thousands of years there.
And so there's a mosque that we're driving by. Our taxi's taking us to our hotel at this point. But again, more of this large ancient castle there. And so the next morning from atop our hotel, we're looking down on the streets there in Cairo. From here, we're going to look south, and in the distance, as we zoom in, we can see the pyramids at Giza, the Great Pyramid, and so forth. Right here next to the city, it's quite amazing that you could see the pyramids right next to the city from a distance.
That is quite a sight.
Yeah. So in our graphic again here, the map, we're going to go across the Sinai, and we're going to turn south and go through the mountains to the Red Sea crossing site. That's our destination. But Solomon's seaport was on the northern tip of the Gulf of Aqaba at Elat, according to 1 Kings 9:26, and it termed this body of water as Yam Suf, or the Red Sea. That is the body of water we're heading over to, the Gulf of Aqaba. And as we're heading east out of Cairo, we're taking our taxi, and we encounter the Suez Canal that we've all heard of. And along the way here, we have to go underneath the Suez Canal. There's a tunnel going underneath the Suez. It's over a mile in length.
That's one way of going through the waters on dry ground,
yes,
I suppose.
Yes. So our driver's taking us through the tunnel here, and we've got an abbreviated video segment of it as we enter. And it's a quite nice, but it is a small, two-lane tunnel. But then we come out the other side after driving over a mile, and we have just left Africa, and we're now in Asia. And we're going to go across the Sinai Peninsula, similar to the route that the children of Israel took. And
albeit not on asphalt.
Yes, yeah. Right. Along the way, we saw this truck in front of us that said, "I love Jesus." Of course, we're in a Muslim country, but we thought that was interesting.
That's very gutsy in a Muslim country.
Right. And so we went through some checkpoints on the way, going through.
Were you ever questioned about your video along the way by those in the checkpoints?
Well, usually our driver would tell us to put the cameras down.
Probably a wise choice.
Yeah, right. We don't want to be hauled off to jail.
No.
So along the way, you see all the flat terrain. This would enable them to travel more quickly across the Sinai. They want to get out of Dodge as fast as possible. And
3 million people in tow, if not more.
Yes. So again, we're taking video, different segments along the way. Again, you see the flat terrain as we're heading further east. And again, this may be an area where we kind of headed south. And again, you see a really flat area where the children of Israel would have journeyed through here.
They would have never suspected that they would be entangled in the desert, as the word says, encountering a Wadi Watir after seeing this.
Yes, I'm sure a lot of the men that knew the area, when they turned south, they became concerned, where is Moses taking us?
Right.
But
Well, as Michael Rood points out in his video, Nueva, in the beach, you're pretty much cornered. You've got
yes,
wilderness to one direction and armies to the other.
yes, right, right. And so in this area, we're getting closer to the Wadi Watur that goes through the mountains. Again, the flat, nice terrain. And here's the beginning of the Wadi Watur. It's a wider area, but you see the mountains on the right and the left. And plenty of room through here. It's a nice, generous, wide area.
You almost wonder if they thought, great, we're going to be hidden in here, and that's going to be a good thing.
Yes.
But was not
But
the case.
they found out later, yeah, they came to a stop. So here's the wadi we're going to travel through to get to the large beach there. And this is where it will exit later. This is from Google Earth.
Can you imagine getting millions of people through there? That would have been a feat in
It
itself.
became tight at some point, but in the distance we see the mountain we'll head to later in our next segment, Mount Sinai over in Saudi Arabia. But you can see the orientation of the crossing site to the Mount Sinai in this graphic here. So here we are, we're going through the Wadi Watur. We see the mountains. This is a nice wide area that we stopped.
And it's still fairly passable here.
Yes,
Does not look like a threat at all.
right. But as it gets narrow, we can see here it's much narrower, and things were a bit congested.
And there is nothing there. I mean, no wonder they were concerned. There's no food, there's no water,
Yes,
just a bunch of rock. And
Right.
so,
and you can't take your wagons over top of these mountains here.
No.
Look how steep this is.
we have to remember, there's no asphalt in that day. I mean, there's no smooth road. They're feeling every bump. They're
Yes.
likely twisting ankles trying to get away
Yeah,
so fast.
Exactly. And so, winding our way through this narrow area, it gets more and more narrow. Here we make a turn through a narrow spot. And I think we may pan up at some point, and you can see how steep these large mountains are. So it says in Exodus 14, they're entangled in the land, the wilderness hath shut them in. So Exodus is telling us they're going through the Wadi Watur, they feel all shut in, they're entangled, they're winding their way through these narrow mountains. And
Yeah, for those who argue a different crossing point, that verse would not make sense.
Right.
Where are they going to
Right.
be literally entangled?
yes, and you can see how steep it is, very steep there. We shot up there, and again, very narrow. You're not going to go over top of these mountains, but Josephus said, for there was on each side a ridge of mountains that terminated at the sea, which were impassable by reason of their roughness and obstructed their flight. So again, he is agreeing with what the Bible is saying about the mountains.
And even with more detail that would further
that it's
prove.
terminating at the sea. And here we're getting closer to the exit point, closer to the beach where they'll come to a stop. In the distance are the end of the mountains. And this is the end of the Wadi Watur. You can see here where it's washed out recently.
Now, had you wondered as you were approaching this, where did that fire come down and separate the Egyptians from the
We will
Israelites?
see evidence of it.
Really?
Yes, we
Okay.
will show that to you. So here we're getting closer to the exit point of the wadi. In the distance is the beach, and past that we can see in the distance now the water of the Gulf of Aqaba.
Now, there's something on that beach modern, is there not? There's some buildings there.
There is, and we'll see that, yes. So there's the wadi we traveled through. We're now at the beach at Nueva. And then there's Nueva jutting out into the water, 5 miles long, 3 miles across. So it's large enough to hold 3 million people.
That is larger than one imagines seeing the photos from
Yes.
the aerial view.
In the background there is the Wadi Watur we came out of,
Okay.
emptied out onto the beach here. This is from our hotel. And you can see the Wadi Watur right there.
So this is what, minus the buildings, of course, this is what the Israelites saw.
Yes,
When they look
some-
back and saw the
yeah.
Egyptians coming.
Some have called this Piharoth, mouth of the hole or canyon, which is, it's a major point to make note of because you're exiting the mountains. So that may be Piharoth. And then here is sunrise the next morning. You can see the beautiful mountains over there in Saudi Arabia and the sun coming up over the mountains. So very interesting. It's nice to be right there at the Red Sea crossing. And here we're panning across You can see the mountains of Saudi Arabia.
So that's where they are going, but they have no idea how they're going to get
How they're
across.
gonna
Can you
do it.
imagine being on that beach, looking
Yes.
at that, saying, Moses, what have you done? No wonder they thought that we're
Yes,
dead.
right. But of course, Moses had full faith in God, that God would do something. He didn't know exactly what. But so here we are taking a look, heading, that's a viewing to the north. And then we headed out from here. We were going to head over to the pillar that marks the spot there
Ah, okay.
at Nueva. And you can see the poor area of town, the Bedouins living.
Now this is the pillar that has been eroded over time, not the
Yes.
ones that the Saudis found on the other side, which was pretty much intact.
Right, this will be the Egyptian pillar we're heading toward. And it was found lying in the water. Here we can see it in the distance next to the road in the center of the video.
Oh, there it is erected there. Yep.
Yeah.
Okay.
So Ron Wyatt showed it to the authorities in 1978. The Israelis were occupying the Sinai Peninsula. He showed it to them. They brought it back from the water's edge and set it up in concrete, which was very nice. So today you can go there and stand beside this pillar.
And that's all thanks to Ron Wyatt.
Yeah,
Essentially.
And Solomon, who erected it to start with.
Of course, yeah.
So, the matching column on the Saudi Arabian side had Hebrew writing on it still when Ron found it in 1984 that said Solomon, Pharaoh, Yahweh, death, Mizraim, which means Egypt, water, Edom. So this was a marker marking the Red Sea crossing spot.
Oh, and someone has made their own markings on it,
yes,
apparently.
unfortunately, but modern graffiti. But Solomon's seaport, Elath, was 50 miles to the north there at modern-day Eilat. And so Solomon, this was his area. This was his neighborhood. And so 400 years after the fact, he had these columns erected to mark the spot of the Red Sea crossing. He knew full well where this event took place.
So that must have been passed down from family to family.
Yeah, sure.
Yep.
So it's a 16-foot red granite Phoenician-style column. Beautiful.
And there's obviously no writing on there. That's all been washed off now.
The back side of it has been eroded away. It doesn't look this nice, and that's where probably some writing was.
But that's a solid piece of granite. That's not like the
Yes.
Sodom and Gomorrah limestone that we saw. This is
Right.
It's
This is very solid red granite. It's very beautiful. So from here, we can get a look at where this is in relation to the water. It's set back. The water's a couple hundred yards away.
and this is the beach here essentially.
Yeah, this is the crossing area right here where the water actually opened up.
Wow.
Yes, it's amazing to stand here.
Now, is there a definite place on the other side that we can match up as to where
Yes.
from the beach?
The column that was cut down in Saudi Arabia, the base of it is still there.
Oh, okay.
So if you line these up, it's 13 miles across the water. Yes. So we're traveling through the local Bedouin village here. But up to the north, before we head down to the crossing site, up to the north is Migdal, or fortress, that is at the narrowest point where the water and mountains come together, is this fortress. I imagine it was designed to limit the travelers going up and down through the beach there, heading north or south. Probably Migdal. And now we're getting ready to head back south to the actual crossing site. And here you can see the beach where the waters opened up. We're standing at the exact spot.
Wow.
Yes, and the mountains of Saudi Arabia in the distance.
Did your knees get weak sitting there? Was it an awesome thing
It was
to
quite
behold?
incredible, yes, to be there. And so in the foreground, right in front of us here, is a melted beach where the sand and the stones were literally melted together like concrete.
Really?
This is not loose sand. This is a melted beach which the pillar of fire created when it stood here. So,
Separating the Egyptian army from
Yeah.
the fleeing Israelites.
yeah. So again, this is more evidence, that confirms the location
My
here.
goodness. Now, how did you find out about that?
I had heard about it, and then I saw it myself you know. So here it is. You see this rock is just infused in with the sand and the little rocks there. And this is all hardened. This is like concrete.
That is amazing.
Jason here is stepping on it. It's very solid. This is a different area.
How did the locals explain this?
I asked the hotel owner was here with us that we know, and he says, I've never seen this before. You know, he said his hotel's in a different area, but you know, he was amazed at what he saw. So,
well, there's the evidence right there. It's solid.
Right. And so a piece of it was broken off for us to look at, and you can see up close here, all the little rocks and the sand, they're melted together, infused by the pillar of fire. And this goes on for some ways. This isn't just one little spot. And so